In today's video, we're starting off talking about how it looks like people are ready for the Steam Deck 2. After that, custom controller profiles on your Steam Deck just got a huge upgrade. And finally, breaking news, your game sells better and makes more money if you price it cheaply. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. I hope you are having a great week playing a ton of video games. I know Crimson Desert is dropping this week and it actually looks pretty cool, so I decided to start another open world RPG. I picked up Monster Hunter Stories 3. Excellent game on Steam Deck. I didn't play the first two games in the series because they were obviously aimed at kids. I just had other stuff going on. I did buy Monster Hunter Stories 2, never played it, probably never will because I'm liking 3 so much. It's just that good. The best way I can describe this game is like Capcom saw people begging for a more mature Pokemon game and decided to make it. You don't catch the monsters in this one, you raid their dens for eggs and then you have to get out before they kick your ass because you're holding their egg. And if you lose the fight, you drop the egg and then you don't get it, so like that sucks. But then you take the egg out, you take it back to your camp, you hatch the egg, and then you get a monster on your squad. There's like a whole meta game where you can steal stats from other monsters and put them on the ones you like, and there's like higher rarity monsters, there's shiny monsters you can make through eggs and rehabitating the habitat. So like there's a lot going on in this game, but the one thing that's really pulling me along is how great the story is. I was not expecting the story to actually hook me. I was here for the gameplay, but this game's story kicks off at the end of the prologue and it's really, really good. As always, let me know what you're playing down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, set your notifications to all, but let's get into the first news story here. So when it comes to the Steam Deck and its age of over 4 years at this point, which absolutely flew by, I feel like I just started this channel and it's already been 4 years. That's almost half a decade, but it's honestly consistently impressive how much the Steam Deck is able to hang on in terms of being able to run brand new games. Like the one I talked about in the intro, Monster Hunter Stories 3, that's a brand new game running in the next generation version of the RE engine, and it runs phenomenally on the Steam Deck. And I think a lot of that in part is due to the Switch 2, because while it is more powerful than the Steam Deck with its NVIDIA chip that has DLSS and everything, roughly speaking, if you optimize a game for the Switch 2, you basically already optimized it for the Steam Deck. So we've been able to like parasite grab good ports of games from the Switch 2 on the Steam Deck, and Monster Hunter Stories 3 is no different. And I expect that to continue on because it happened with Resident Evil Requiem and Chronos: The New Dawn as well. The Switch 2 is selling really well. It's a growing platform. Clearly games are selling well there because more third-party brand new games are coming to it than the Switch 1 got. So as far as that goes, I think we're sitting pretty for at least the next few years while the ports keep coming until, of course, the PS6 and Xbox Project Helix come out and they scale up the performance target for a lot of these games. But you know, we're 4 years in, we're used to what we have with the Steam Deck, and it seems like people are at the point where they're totally happy with what they've got, but they wouldn't be upset if Valve woke up tomorrow and decided to announce the Steam Deck 2. And now there's hard data because PC Guide put out a poll and asked their readers to vote in it, and 67% of their readers basically said that yeah, the Steam Deck OLED is still relevant, but they wouldn't be mad if Valve announced a Steam Deck 2 and they'd be really excited to buy it. Interestingly, they also asked their readers to say whether or not they think the competition is so much better than the Steam Deck, and everyone basically aligned and said no, because if you look at the competition, things shake out a little weird. Like if you look at the Z2 Go or the regular Z1, you're basically playing with chips that are on par with the Steam Deck. So those objectively are not much better. The Z1 Extreme in very specific games can get a lot better frame rates than the Steam Deck at higher settings, but like as someone who has the Legion Go S with SteamOS, if you want to get better frame rates, you have to lower the resolution to the Steam Deck's 800p, which does not look good on the huge screen. Like Resident Evil 4 Remake, I was just testing it on all my devices, and to get noticeably better frame rates out of that game, you have to drop it to 800p, and it just looks so screen doory that it's not really worth it. And then if you're playing at the 1200p resolution of the screen, it's LCD, so it looks worse, and also you get the exact same performance as the Steam Deck, so that's not really an upgrade. And if I'm being real, I haven't really messed around with the Xbox ROG Ally X. I think the screen's too small, which is crazy to say because, you know, it's a handheld, you want it to be portable, but it really feels like a downgrade despite the fact that it's LCD and not OLED. It just feels too small to play these big console games on. It's a very thin 16:9 panel, so I just haven't really messed around with it. I might put SteamOS on it and put it through its paces, but like there's big drawbacks to all the competition, which really just shows that Valve was smart to make the Steam Deck a jack of all trades, master of none. It's just good at everything instead of great at one specific thing, aka performance. So it makes sense why people feel like the competition isn't so much better than the Steam Deck. And when it comes to the Steam Deck 2, I think it's off the table for this year. Like obviously Valve's got to get the current hardware they have announced out the door, the Steam Machine, the Steam Frame, and the Steam Controller. But like once those are released and we get through 2026, I think 2027 is the year we're going to see the Steam Deck 2. It just feels right. And people say we haven't heard anything about it. Valve just comes out of nowhere with this stuff, right? Like we had some idea they were going to at least announce the Steam Frame, but like at the time I was just speculating. I was like, I would really like a Steam console that uses SteamOS and has a Steam controller that's just a Steam Deck without the screen. That's exactly what we got, but it kind of blindsided everyone, as did the Steam Deck. That didn't leak at all before it came out. And then the Steam Deck OLED didn't leak at all. Like that was a 100% genuine surprise. No one knew they were even working on it, and they kind of told people not to expect it. So when it was announced, it was like a really cool, awesome surprise to line up to pre-order day one. So even though Valve isn't saying that they're actively working on the Steam Deck 2 right now, we know they are because they've been upfront that they're going to make it, and they're just waiting for the generational leap in performance and battery life, yada, yada, yada. That is there with the Strix Halo chips. There are chips being worked on that are going to be used in the PlayStation handheld, which ironically is going to be announced to release next year. So like 2027 feels like a good spot for Steam Deck 2. If I wanted to be realistic, I'd say that it's probably going to come out in 2028. But yeah, I think we're in a good spot with Steam hardware. Of course, the RAM-pocalypse is always going to be a factor, but I really do think the fact that Valve targets lower specs does help them in the long run, and kind of is a counter to the fact that they don't have the lanes to take advantage of like Microsoft and Sony do with their specific consoles. They're just going to have to re-strategize, and we've seen in the past that Valve is good at strategizing. So the Steam Deck right now is in a good enough spot. I think it'll stay at that good enough plateau over the next couple of years, mainly because of the RAM-pocalypse forcing developers to target lower end hardware. And then right when it starts to feel long in the tooth is probably right when we'll get the Steam Deck 2 announcement. So like timeline wise, I think everything is looking just fine. But moving on here, let's talk about the custom controller profile update that the Steam Deck just got that really improved things across the board. So I don't know how many people actually use custom controller profiles, but I use them all the time. There's a game called Surround Dead that I play on the Steam Deck that's like an open world zombie survival game. It doesn't have controller support, so I used a custom profile. Another game that I played at the end of last year and really enjoyed, Escape from Duckov, was one that I had to use custom controls on. And then there's a new game that I'm playing called Cargo Hunters that I found through NextVest. That does not have controller support, so I have to use a custom controller profile. So it seems like extraction shooters, map games, turn-based strategy, those are great for custom controller profiles because for some reason games in those genres don't seem to have controls set up out of the box. But one thing that's a little bit annoying about finding custom controller profiles is doing it on the Steam Deck, because the screen is really small, and when you're running a game in the background, it does slow down SteamOS just a little bit, so you have to wait a little bit longer for all the menus to pop up. It's just a little bit frictionful, you know, like, or cumbersome is the right word, where it doesn't have to be. So people have been asking for a web interface where they can at least look up controller profiles, and that's exactly what we have now. The website is called Steam Input DB. It was made by just one guy. It's still in beta, but I tried it out and it works really well. And the cool new upgrade it got is that you can see the controller laid out like it is on your Steam Deck. So if you look up a controller profile and it's for the Steam Deck, there will be a picture of the Steam Deck, and every button will have a line from it telling you what key is mapped to that button. I think that's essential, right? Like having it all listed out, it's too much information. It's hard to keep track of, and seeing it visualized with an actual picture of the controller you want to use just makes it connect, in my brain at least, a lot easier. So I think this was a great upgrade. And on top of that, it also provides a really cool and easy way to search through all the custom community profiles that are available on Steam, because I don't know if you guys have ever tried to find specific controller profiles, but you usually have to go over to the search page and then hit the X button to show all of them. And it's like a 75-25 shot that it actually shows enough. And then it doesn't sort them right sometimes. Like it should put the ones that have the most thumbs up at the top, but you have to scroll down a little bit to find those. So this just streamlines that process and makes it it easier to find. If I was Valve, I would buy this site and hire the guy to just run it for me in the background because it works incredibly well. And it's honestly kind of surprising that there isn't a resource officially from Valve because it's just great to have this. If you're playing any of these new games that don't have controller support, it just got a lot easier to find controller setups for your Steam Deck and I guess your SteamOS PC, the Steam Machine, and any device using Steam. So big improvements coming right now. Finally, that brings me to the third news story of today's video, which is coming from that Newzoo report that we talked about in the last video that said PC gaming is going to overtake consoles by 2028. And an update there, Capcom just put out their earnings report and they basically came out and said they expect PC to be the dominant platform in the coming future, which is great because out of all the Japanese publishers, for all the problems Capcom had with games like Dragon's Dogma 2 and what was the other one? Monster Hunter Wilds, there's like 50 other games from them that came out in the past few years that run flawlessly on PC. And I just want to continue to see that getting better because man, Resident Evil Requiem was such an incredible port to PC that I hope that's the benchmark for them going forward. So that's a cool update on PC kind of taking over instead of consoles. But another stat that was tucked away in that Newzoo report was that it turns out people on PC are willing to spend more money on Steam if the games that they're buying are cheaper at their base price. So like not a $70 game that's on sale, a game that starts at around $30, those end up selling more copies and making more money than full price games because that's the target price point that PC players are willing to spend on brand new games. So stuff like Hollow Knight Silksong, that game I mentioned earlier, Cargo Hunters, those cheaper indie games that have really refined gameplay mechanics and an entire game built around some really well-refined mechanics, those are what are selling on Steam. And it seems like developers are starting to catch on because more and more games are coming out at lower than full price. I think there's a few reasons for this. First of all, up until this generation, PC games were just $50. So like if you bought a digital game on Steam that was $60 on the Xbox One or PS4, for some reason, those were just $50 on PC forever. And then this generation, they skipped over $60. Like you'd have some outliers last gen that would be $60, but those were the premium AAA games. This generation, premium games are $70. Everything else is some random price between $30 and $50. I don't know why that is, but like we've been basically trained to expect the maximum to be $50. So a $20 increase over that is kind of a lot to ask. Another factor, of course, is that for some reason, the most expensive games are the ones that have the most problems. I mean, all these premium games come out, they're basically unfinished, they need tons of patches. We get the classic black box with white text apology being like, somehow it slipped past us that our game runs like shit on every PC under the sun, including PS5 and Xbox Series X. So we'll work on it, but still give us that full price $70, even though you could wait 6 months for us to finish the game, get all the DLC for free, and pay less for it. That's a crazy phenomenon that I don't understand how developers don't realize is really affecting the amount of people who will buy their games day one. Like there's a rule on PC now that you don't pre-order games and developers seemingly can't figure that one out. So like, I don't know what's going on there. And the third reason is what I touched on earlier in this segment. Indie games are just high quality now. Like people are putting out games that look and run amazing. They have really cool, interesting, new, innovative gameplay mechanics that are actually exciting. They tap into that dopamine and they run well on Steam Deck because they're usually well optimized or aren't pushing the boundaries with Unreal Engine 5 graphics. So like there's a trifecta going on here where we've been trained to buy games for $50 forever and then they switched up this generation with it. A lot of times these $70 games aren't justifying $50, let alone $70, and indie games are the ones pushing innovation in the games industry. So I'm sure the reading of this will be that cheaper games sell better, but I think what's really happening is people will spend money on high quality games because as we see from the data, the developers who are selling their games cheaper make more money. So it's not necessarily a spending issue, it's a value issue where you have to provide value. And it just turns out that the cheaper games, traditionally speaking lately, are the ones providing the most value. So that's how I would read it. I'm sure there are many ways to do it, but at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, if you have a good high quality game with a good high quality PC port and you don't screw around with people's time or money on launch day, you're generally rewarded with more sales and more money, which is ultimately what they want. But yeah, guys, that brings me to the end of the video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.